right. So the topic today, we're going to talk mainly about Mark Zuckerberg and Meta's kind of announcement to get rid of their content moderation uh, practices
Yeah.
and go to more of a community notes approach, similar to what Elon Musk instituted over at X, formerly known as Twitter. And I know, Alex, you and I sparred a couple ideas back and forth around what we think this means for the creator economy. So we'll kind of dive into that. But before we do, I think I wanted to frame up coming into the new year. We're going to start doing this on a weekly basis, and why you and I decided to have these weekly conversations. Hopefully, people will find it useful. So maybe tell me just a little bit about like why you're like, hey, let's start to have these conversations covering a variety of topics on kind of the future of the creator economy. Like for you, what do you want to share through these series of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway, and like for a lot of people in the creator economy community, like on LinkedIn or or all these different conferences, I think we need to create more of a shared knowledge of like where the space actually is versus where the perception of where it was 5, 10 years ago. And I think a lot with technology, a lot changes rapidly, but I think in our space specifically, um, there has to be more of a dialogue around some of the changes I think needed in this space, and I think it really does start here. Um, Not the people just in front of the cameras and the creators, but also I think everybody behind the scenes, and I think that's uh, you know industry people. Like we're talking, like I said, talking a lot of LinkedIn to each other, but like I think we need to kind of bring this more to the surface and having more of an honest dialogue about how we could actually make a change on the industry, and I think move it forward in a way that is going to connect the consumer more to creators of content. And I think it starts with people behind the scenes giving them the right guidance and the right infrastructure and the right uh, knowledge of where things are going in the future. And I think it's interesting that we've connected, which we said on several different podcasts, because I'm in the creator economy world, and you kind of fell into it backwards through a lot of the companies in your portfolio, and you're seeing how it operates, and we kind of get to put our heads together and making a different type of impact.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's why it's worthwhile just to have this kind of constant conversation and dialogue, and so just to be more specific about it, as you were saying, I think the reason why I got really excited about it when we started diving into this was, you're coming at it from a kind of from the agency side, focusing on supporting the long tail creators, and you were like, hey man, like the way this is set up right now is just not even close to the best way, especially based on where the world is going. And so I think what I think is interesting about your position in the creator economy, you're in the weeds every day. And I think hopefully we can provide some insights and conversation that can really serve creators, other agents, other folks in, like you said, kind of this support system infrastructure, because it's very clear to me that we need a different type of infrastructure and support systems to really bring, I guess, the creator economy into this next chapter. So
100%. Yeah. And again, there's a lot going on. Like, I think it's great that you've even taken the time to understand the space, because if you think about, from my experiences, most investors or even brand founders like that are in the weeds every day of building their companies, like it's like for whatever reason, it's like a secondary, like not as important. It's not on the, it's not in the boardroom meetings or monthly agendas with share. Like they don't. It's like it probably makes like 5 minutes of the footnotes, but it's really not a big conversation. And I think we can both agree that it needs to be at least a bigger conversation in how a company is being built today, and what they're doing as a social media strategy. Like that's a simple concept that I think we all know deep down, but for whatever reason, it's not at the forefront as much as it should be. So I think it's good, just the fact that you've even taken the time, and I think a lot more investors will do that as well. And I think we'll see that over the next 3 to 5 years, a large shift in just everyone should have a knowledge of the space, whether you're in it every day or you're have some reliance on it for your business, right? So I think that's the key.
yeah, and I think to that point, I mean, to me, it's just the economy now. It's not even the creator economy. I think that's what you're
Yeah.
getting at, which is like if you're in a boardroom or meeting and with the marketing team, influencer marketing, allocating budget to creators, that should be part of your strategy, right? And And then what we've seen because of all these celebrity launch brands and creator led brands and them selling products, most of them which have just sucked, to be honest, and have flamed out.
Yeah.
What I find since I've been spending time in this space is now people are realizing, oh, this is the primary form of distribution, especially for the consumer space right now. And this is where people's attention are. So we have to take this seriously.
Yeah.
But then what I see people doing is like, all right, well, let's explore an equity deal, or let's partner up with on a new venture or create a venture and have a creator come be the face of that venture. And so it seems very at this point a little bit exploitative.
Exploitative, yeah. Oh my, you think you could say it in your head and then you try to pronounce it. It just doesn't come out.
Yeah, and it's just gotten to this stage where, I mean, this will all wash away, and I think we're seeing it. But I think that's kind of the stage that we're at right now, which is it's kind of like this lull in my mind. But I think what's really fascinating is coming out of this, what I kind of call the lull or exploitative phase. I think this is really, really exciting times going to come, and we talk a lot about that.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And we do talk about the concept and what you just outlined. Like, brand says we need a face of our brand, and you've said this before, but it's backwards. Like, what should happen is the creators like, this is what I want to build. It actually starts in the creator side, and then they can go find the appropriate opportunity or start collaborating and building their vision for it, versus the creator having to fit into the vision that was created outside their platform. It's like you're saying, it's kind of works backwards, and I think it has to kind of start from the creator side, and it starts with the content they're making, what they're passionate about, and like what truly do they want in terms of value to provide to their community, because they have to monetize in some shape or form. They can't not sell anything at the end of the day, right? They can't pay their but if it is something, what is that thing? And they should double and triple down on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going back to your point of this. They're really kind of inverting the whole approach to business building, right? So the concept of historically of just being a creator was creating content, or like basically being for brands being a marketing arm.
Yeah.
And that's really shifting now. To where if they do start to become business builders, that's a totally different approach. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. And then that kind of, I think that dovetails really nice into your world, which is, okay, all these agencies, both the larger ones and even a lot of the smaller ones now that were kind of birthed in this kind of influencer marketing, creator economy 1.0, they are not set up largely to really create the right support for talent to build businesses. It doesn't seem that way from my experience. So can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in that beyond just your traditional brand deals or sponsorship deals?
Yeah, I think I can shed my own experience into like, it gives a lot of context to everything going on. But like, and again, this is probably a deeper conversation, but there was no actual infrastructure for this economy to learn like what should be the module for actually supporting creators. And what I mean by that is, I'll just take my experience. Like, I went to college, I got a marketing degree. Like, there was nothing about creator economy in school. Like there was, a lot of the traditional advertising, like there's a million things that they can learn at universities, or they can go out of college and get experience at a company doing it. But what happens when somebody was brilliant enough to say, wait a second, like there's a space here, whether it's myself or some people I know in the space, and they're creating the rules as they go, and the rule system they're creating is not efficient, it's not as effective, and everybody, all the competing agencies are playing by the same exact rule set. You kind of need someone to say, wait a second, like it's being done incorrectly. And the reason and I think it comes down to like more experience needs to come to the space, maybe questioning our tactics a little bit more than what we've done over the years. And then also, obviously, like great thing comes from testing and trying things out. Like creators, like kind of have and agencies alike, by the way, like we kind of have a one-track mindset about how to participate in the space. Like, let's change up the conversations, try different things, and we can showcase what's really working for. It's, by the way, not what's working for the brands, creators, agents, whatever. Like what's actually working for the consumers. And that's fundamentally where everything has to go.
Sure.
Like we have to. So, and I don't know if some of the most recent events, I think, is actually showing the power the consumer has. I mean, we can look at the election. We can look at some of the things that are going on right now at Instagram with even Mark Zuckerberg changing the rules, which I know you wanted to touch on this podcast, because it is so interesting that like the consumer's always going to win anyway. So we have to like really understand them and put the right things in place for them to, whether again, even if it's the lowest part of the spectrum, whether it's entertainment, people just want to, they log into social media to like, share a meme or a post or something, whether it's educational, which I think is a lot more important, which most of the time consumers are in this country, and I pray, but like they seem to seek out more entertainment than educational content for the most part. There's got to be a way to maybe merge both realistically, which we've always tried to do in entertainment. I think the Disney company, the early version of it, has always done that very well with Epcot, making a fun experience, but like there's a lot of educational components to agriculture, to technological advancements, to manufacturing industry, to automobiles. There's a lot of things that you can do, but make it still fun, especially for maybe some of the younger consumers, which we're seeing mostly on social media right now. Instead of just like, playing esports all day, like there's things we can be doing. If they're in that ecosystem ready, we can put some really good products and really good information out to them and help.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense to me. Let's dive into the point about the consumer is winning, and I think what you mean by that is, at the end of the day, brands, creators, like it's dictated. Like a lot of their work is dictated about what consumers want or what consumers respond to. I should say, right?
Sure.
And so if for the folks that are listening, if you didn't see or hear, a few days ago, I don't know exactly what day it was, but today is January 9th, Mark Zuckerberg announced a huge change to Meta's content policies across both Facebook and Instagram, which is they're getting rid of actual people moderating content because of bias, because of deplatforming for things that are not that would be classified under the terms of censorship, and just basically following the playbook of what Elon Musk did over at X. And so I'll talk about my initial reaction. I want to get your initial reaction, Alex, and then I reflected on it more. I'll tell you kind of where my head's at on it. But when I first saw that, it was a clear demonstration of what you just said, Alex, which is the big reason why they did that is because this is where the consumers and the public want to go. Yes. Right? Like that's why they did it. Let's be clear. That, and for the political environment completely changed with Trump coming into office and the focus on free speech and the MAGA movement. So that's the reason why he did it.
Yeah. Yes, I'm with you 100%.
It's like, I mean, let's just call a spade. But I think what's really, really important that people need to understand, the reason why is because the people voted.
Yes.
Right? The people voted in November. Mm-hmm. And so then the market, it's not a surprise, does what the people want.
Yes.
So my initial reaction when I saw that they were going to go to this community notes style approach and really just focus any of their content moderation on just very extreme situations around violence or hate. And so my initial reaction, it was, I said, oh, that's really interesting. Because this is going to happen, you get the good and the bad with that, right? Because there's just the good and the bad of the world and the consciousness of the world and where people are of what they're going to be posting and sharing. And so that, like we saw in the early days of the Twitter takeover, the largest advertisers just fled the platform. And part of that was just like protecting their brand and their brand identity. Yes. And so for me, I was like, oh, this is a really big deal. And this is going to be even more of a boon for advertising dollars needing to find their way into supporting creators that they can trust and that I guess that you would consider brand friendly. Yeah. Right. And so anyways, that was my initial reaction. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. You're going to see a ton of budget being pulled out of these platforms for the general advertising, right? They need to find different ways to advertise in these platforms other than the actual like marketplaces that they offer, because of this reason, because they'll see your ad could end up next to some crazy content and that content might be crazy in the context of from the brand's perspective. That's just someone else's perspective. So, anyways, I'm rambling here. What was your thought?
Not at all. I think you're 100% spot on. And I wanted like create like a parallel, very simple example, but like if Meta and all these social media platforms are like a basketball court where a group of guys could go play a basketball game, and like you look at the ecosystem, like the creators being the players pretty much in the game. What Meta is like basically saying in this announcement right now is like, wait a second, like we can't be the coach. We can't be the person to tell people like, how they can play, how they can cooperate. Like at the end of the day, they're really just the referee, which is the middleman, not biased. Like it's again, they're not allowing information that could truly harm people. That's based on facts and not opinionated or biases or perspectives. Like if someone says like there's a bomb, or like there's something there's a place, a time and a place to like bring in a community notes, or like they misrepresent a date. Like our Americans independent. There's things that they can do that are factually based that are not, you can't objectify to. But what you look at what's happened so much over the years, I think, is like you said, if a brand wants to find brand safe content, and like because the next post might not be in line with their thinking, like, oh, they're bad for the community, bad for business, bad, like, and that is censorship because they're not allowing a free voice and opinion, regardless if we agree with it. And I think most people might even find that whatever post, we didn't even say any specificity to it, but like it probably, you could get the idea. Like a lot of times, it's not like the best post, but it's the freedom of expression, the right to voice your own opinions. And that's what the creator economy is. And I can give a really good example here. It's pretty time sensitive based on what just happened with the fires in LA right now, which is Palace. It's actually brutal. But like you kind of think about like, I find the media, I hate to like, it's so sensitive. I'm not trying to be insensitive to it, but like it's just hard to not notice the media coverage on the issues right now, and like how we're so used to, like, we even see the clips online of like at CNN, they have the reporters and the helicopter, and like we're so used to that type of coverage. But the most impactful part of this situation right now, if you look at it, it hasn't been the main media sources that are going onto the site to like report from it. It's like it's actually been the people in the fires, which is like, it's horrific because like they're fighting for their lives, they're losing their homes, everything's. But like they're talking about this right now in X, but like they're the ones communicating like their street locations and what's going on. We're getting the real time, like, and I think that I hate to say it, but it kind of reflects what Elon Musk is saying about like people in the media, regardless if you're a creator or not. This could be someone who has no social media.
Sure.
It's putting it all out. It's a different. We're not adjusting to that, and I think this also. Listen, I think this ties into what whether we indirectly or directly, Zuckerberg is pretty much saying like we have to be more hands off, and by us, it's not just Meta itself, but all its brand partners and all of its strategic advisors, right? There's that parallel is right there, and it's happening out in real time, and there's a really weird irony in it. Like it's horrific what's going on, but there's just this weird irony where if you actually look at the election map, like I'm like 90% certain there's certain parts of, I don't know if it was Palisades or the Hills, but like a lot of those communities were like probably the only blue communities, and it just pisses me off because I know that the LAPD fire department budget got cut. And this is not even I don't have anything against Gavin Newsom, but right now I kind of do because I'm hearing that he's cutting the fire department budget, and this happens, and there was no plan, and homes are getting wrecked, and like you can't help but get infuriated by it. Obviously, it's more complicated than I'm making it, but like that initial concept, it's like, so this all kind of ties into like this centralized planning approach, which is like Zuckerberg, which is the California government right now. Like the people have power, and like I don't think that most people right now, consumers, they show this in the election, they're showing this on social media. All of our natural catastrophes, all these political events that are happening, like it starts with people, and we're the ones that are going to make it better. It's not going to come from central planners, and we've seen it in every sector: finance, media. We're seeing this in building businesses right now, like legacy companies. Like things are changing, and it all there's a parallel to everything we talk about here, in my opinion. They all kind of play into the same hand. If you really dive and think about it, that things are changing, and I think in this particular situation, like there's a lot of bad things that might happen that were avoidable, that under different circumstances. Where I know a lot of people in LA in my industry, and like they were not against the idea. They were against the idea of all these large budgets going to illegal immigrants and not to protecting taxpayer dollars and homes there, and having an actual plan, which there's plenty of podcasts online from 3 months ago with Joe Rogan talking about like stuff like this can happen.
Sure.
So imagine, just to go full circle here, imagine if the community, the fact checkers at Facebook and Joe Rogan wanted to put out his podcast saying, and it's out there, like there could be fires in LA that sweep to the Pacific Ocean, and like, oh, this is inappropriate content and we're not going to put this out there. That's the fundamental problem. So it has to be okay for him to put out that content, whether there's, you agree with it or not. Like it's worth the investigation if there's, and that's kind of in a full swing circle, like why it matters, in my opinion, on a deeper level, is it opens the doors for not just main media and, the big brands, but, every little guy on the platform as well to like share perspective, and we can form a group think and, kind of a populace around ideas and perspectives. So that was a long-winded probably answer to the idea, but I really try to.
I didn't follow the end, but it's okay.
What part? I could explain it again too. I'm sorry.
Well, so you started. I'm gonna distill it down, right? So you started by saying what the fires are horrible, the incident's horrible. So obviously that's obvious. Like, and we hope that everyone can be as safe as possible there. But you started out by saying the reality is this, which is the way the traditional media is covering that event is not even close to the impact and importance into the truth, which is just the reality, than the individuals reporting from their street or their neighborhood or their town of exactly what's happening and what's going on. So you started by saying that, right? So what I took from that was, this is just another example of, if we want the truth, because to me this is all about the truth, and we want to inform people with independent information of the truth so they can become more informed, this is just such a better avenue and way to do it, through social media. And then what I gleaned from what you were saying is then that leads obviously into the actual creator economy, people that actually spend part or full time actually creating content to help inform the public on a variety, or their audience in a variety of subjects. And so that's how you started. But then, and then at the end, I just didn't follow. You were talking about how it opens the door for brands and populist groupthink or something. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. I didn't know what that meant at the end.
Sorry, I'll bring it all full circle. But like pretty much,
you're giving me like 1984 vibes, and I'm like, I don't know.
Sorry about that. What I meant to say was like, in this particular incident, the majority of people, especially not just in the state but outside the state, wouldn't have agreed with the decision of cutting the fire department budget specifically because of this. And then, you factor that into all the people on the ground there that were getting impacted by this. It's like, and then you see the media come in from outside the state, or or not in that part of the state, to then offer their perspective on it, which I'm also making a comparison to, like, if you think about like Meta's role of censorship, there's a similarity.
I see. Okay, I got
it. The popular group, I don't want to hear from the media going in and with their reports. I want to hear the people on the ground that were getting burned to death. There was a few deaths or losing their homes. Even, by the way, wealthy Hollywood actors, like, I don't care if you're rich or, like, they're crying, like they got impacted. Like that I could hear from. And if you think about it, they're sharing their perspectives and they have their own channel on their media, like.
I see you're saying what you're saying, which that makes complete sense to kind of wrap it all.
Yeah. I have all the ideas here, but sometimes it doesn't come out the right way. But yeah.
I mean, no, but it's important, because I think the core of what you're saying is actually completely correct and important, which is like, the only people that should have the proper perspective in view of how their budget should be allocated, or should have a real say in their local and state budget, are the people that actually live there, because they're the ones that are being affected by it.
Yes.
And you don't need people coming in from across the country or whatever with their 15-person, production crews to cover a fire, and then providing biased coverage or whatever coverage about other issues or whatever it is. It's like, you want to hear from the person who lives on the corner of where there's fires. And then, this has happened. We've had nearly every year for the past decade.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, well, this should probably be prioritized in our budget. And the last thing that should get cut is our fire department when you're dealing with large forest fires.
Thank you for
Like,
articulating that. That's exactly it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. It's
Um,
just comical. It's sad because I don't want to be insensitive to it because it's sad because it just happened. But
totally.
it's like, come on, you're like the media being responsible for probably. I don't want to say. I don't want to pour on the hate on Gavin. I feel like it's. I don't want. It's not my own perspective, but like the people almost responsible for some of these indirectly these situations happening in California, and then coming in there. Look at what happened. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like this is horrific. It's so. It's just that I think like it's a, and this is where the problem lies. Like I don't think I'd be feeling that way
Mhm.
if, and I don't know if it's directly tied, but like between censorship on social and I think it was good what happened in the election just because people spoke out. But like if the people made a decision collectively in California, like let's cut the fire department the budget, which they never would have. If that was the case, you don't. It's like kind of you got what you sowed, but
Sure.
that's not the case. I talked to a lot of people there. Like they had no idea about budget cuts until it happened. You know,
Well, yeah. No,
you know what I'm saying, and their
it's
lives
a
are
it's
uprooted.
it's
Yeah,
it's a big problem in the U.S. Which is, and people don't realize this, including myself, are not engaged in this. Like the reality is, people should be way more engaged in their state and local politics
yes,
because of these reasons, right? Like people should know that, like, oh, they're voting to cut the fire department budget. And when they do that, everyone should show up to talk to their state senator or their state representative and make sure that
yeah,
they don't do that.
correct.
So I agree. It's but it's interesting, because I'm going back to, like, after reflection of this initial reaction, which I was like, oh, the advertisers are going to flood, and then back to, I think, what you were trying to get at, which is the reality is this: the advertisers, corporations, like they're like sociopathic, right? They don't have feelings. They're just going to where the demand is and where the consumer is.
For sure.
So if the consumer's like, I want to be on an unbiased, independent platform with my content and the content I want to consume, then the advertisers will come back. That's
Yes,
just the reality,
that's correct.
right?
Yes,
So, and I think that was my whole thing, which is like, at first I was so like, oh my goodness, they're gonna flee, and then that means like all this budget, they're gonna have to figure out new ways to spend on these platforms. That obviously goes right into our thesis around kind of creators providing independent, informative content and educational content around a variety of topics. But then I was like, no, but like it's not going to happen because the market will just follow what the consumers want.
right. And I'm doing a deep dive too with you. I completely agree. Like if you think about it, we're just on this pod. I think a lot of people we've arrived at this conclusion that information that we're getting distributed to us should be unbiased. But throughout the course of human history, like you can look at this, like we get to this place, like this should be a constant concept. And I can
Sure.
guarantee you 20, 30 years from now, we'll come right back to where we are because somebody who said, let's make it not biased, that group of people then brought their own bias into it. And we're right back to where we started from, maybe in a different light or in some different avenues. But like, it's human nature that like we're just going to keep finding ways for like political power or like somebody who's got who's built up a say to interfere or create some sort of medium. And again, it might not be social media, but the point that I'm making here is like we're arriving at this very, it should have been a very simple conclusion in 2025. So like not censor people. Like remember when America like used to not be like China, but we could make a comedy movie. You know what I'm saying? And like
Sure.
this should be a constant. This shouldn't be a objective. This shouldn't be changing. This is what it should always be moving forward. And like
Sure.
human history has shown us that like we can't bet on that. And that's
Yeah. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, everything comes down to money and
dollars and
power, right?
cents. Dollars and cents. Yeah.
That's
Yes.
it, man. It's like the bet.
Yeah.
It's like,
I
I
know.
don't care what anyone says. It's like the number one thing you hear. It's like, just follow the money.
Yeah.
That's it. And
I'm saying this as an agency too, like even in the social media space. Like,
that's
is
right.
this truly the new set of the rules? Like, I just see, like Zuckerberg made this announcement this week. Like, what are we going to hear next year? Like, we're going back to this new. I'll articulate a different way to say, like, oh, we're going back to like, fact checkers because this happened. Like, I'm telling you right now, like, it's never like really out of the woods. Like, we think we're like in this good spot.
What do you mean out of the woods?
Like, for example, like if something like happens again, like let's say it's another tragedy, but say they blame, oh, like there was people on social media, right? Because it's now free expression, say what you want, like
Okay.
might have caused this issue.
Sure.
They'll say this is what happens because there's a group of people that don't agree with this. They'll say this is what happens when you get rid of the fact checkers, right? Like,
Got it.
and we start going back into this cycle.
But you know what? My belief, man, on this is as someone I'm generally not very, I'm generally off social media. I'm using it more just to get my news and certain information, and like really curating my information intake. I mean, I'm like 90% podcasts is how I get my information, but this is the reality. We talk about this too, which is there's so much content being created now.
Yes.
And it what's almost like my view now is like it's just so saturated and there's so much going on that like the best ideas will win.
Yes.
The best ideas will win.
Yes.
And you just want the marketplace of ideas, and all this other crap that like don't matter or have these like very small factions of people that are extreme in their views for whatever reason on whatever topic.
Yes.
They just won't matter.
Agree.
You know, I think what's interesting is because over the past decade or so, or more than 6-7 years, like you have to realize the growth of these platforms and the growth of attention and the people and the momentum these platforms can create.
Yes.
That was all very new. So no one knew how to react to it. So everyone would pile on and pile on and pile on until you start seeing outcomes and like what that's leading to. And people are like, well, at the end of the day, people are like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like,
sure.
We have gender changing clinics all around the freaking country where like you have like 12-year-olds changing their gender. And you're like, so, like what? Like,
sick.
I don't care what I don't care anyone's sexual orientation or anything. I'm supportive. Live your life how you want to live your life. But like, what?
Yeah. Nuts. Yeah.
Nuts, right?
It's
so
not
you're
even
just like
political. It's like it's a
no,
child.
it's just like logical, man.
Yeah.
It's logical. And I'll tell you, I have I've seen several instances now of, you know, I would say people like teens and that kind of generation, their teens, early 20s, kind of coming up and kind of very interesting seeing kind of how they think about the world and how they've been conditioned.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it makes me even more, my views are very extreme against social media and screens and everything for young people. I mean, it is like I just see how it conditions them. And as a teenager in general, you're confused.
Yeah.
Right? Like we've all been confused as a teen, right? You're just
we're
figuring
confused as adults right now too.
Yeah, exactly. We're all like little babies. We don't know what we're doing, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry, I'm just going on my like my rant, but
I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, it's anyways. So anyways, let's rope it back to the creator economy a little bit. So okay, so Meta announced this, getting rid of content moderation, really focus on free speech, no censorship. And what you said, Alex, to me about, which is the reality, which is using the example of the fires in SoCal, like it's just the best place to get the truth, and the information is from people direct from the source. It's direct from the source. It's the same concept of like, if you want to eat the best food, get it directly from where it's grown.
Yes. Facts.
And so that is the reality of, you know, what we're talking about. And I think the question then becomes for you as someone in this world, in the agency world, okay, we all can agree on that. And it's just going to take time. And the gatekeepers are going to hold on to every last drop for as long as they can in every industry, right? But it's all going to come crumbling down because the reality is people want the truth.
Yes.
So if we agree on that, and we know that 90+ of the dollars that support the creator economy are in this traditional kind of brand partnership or talk about my product even though you don't believe in it or know anything about what's inside of it. Right? I mean, that's the reality, right? It's like, it's ironic. You have sorry, now I'm like going really I'm definitely ranting. You have a creator who's focused on like telling the truth or giving independent information, and they're like, you know, putting up their, you know, the product with like all types of chemicals and nasty stuff inside of it. I won't name the brand or whatever, but anyways, sorry. How do
I don't even know
we
what happened, by the way, but I could totally see the brand saying there's no chemicals. Like, yeah, they're like are like to them just so they do it, and like they didn't actually check it. Like they're under the it's clean, but like when you look at it, oh, is it really clean? Like I don't know.
Well, no, the big it's clean because like the guys that
Smiling,
I get this stuff from,
yeah,
like who handle the local people who get the stuff, say it's clean.
yeah, I know.
You know. Um. All right. So how do we move this? How do we? What's like the lowest hanging fruit of starting to transition and diversify away from this traditional brand deal model?
Yeah.
Not longer term, not there's a whole education process, but what is it like? What can agents and creators start doing tomorrow to start thinking about this and getting into like other revenue streams or other ways to support their work?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with number one, which is the first creator that actually takes the correct approach with the right agent, and getting, we always want case studies, but like actually exemplifying it with successful stories, and then it's the creator economy is big enough where like when you have one person could probably influence whatever 100, and then 100 can influence it. It's not going to be everybody just going to mass adopt a new way of doing business in the space, but it's got to have a snowball effect where just change. I know we talked. Yes, it's education can't be forever. Like there has to be immediate action in the space, but um, you know, if people are, let's just say, for example, people are seeing our content I talk to a lot of them, and I'm influencing them. I'm giving them ideas, whether I can't control if they take them or not, but like putting out the information there, getting even a few to start, and explaining the rationale as to why it's successful too. So like we're talking about, like we kind of just laid it out in this podcast, right? Like if you're going to support a brand, like you should know where it comes from. You should know what the strategy is going to be to actually communicate to people like why this is important, like right? Because like you could have the best products, but if it sat in a warehouse and nobody knew about it, nobody would ever use it. So you have to not just get in front of people, but communicate why it's the best too. Because once they make the first purchase, or they try it out, or they understand what's in it, or um, there's an ethos to like why this is better than what they've used in the past, which we're seeing in a lot of different sectors slowly. Um, then it gives an opportunity to, by the way, the consumer to like actually make them healthier. And like I think we're seeing a lot of things in with America, make America healthy again, like in politics. It shouldn't be political, but it's become politicized. So like
Hold on, I
people,
gotta stop you because you got way off topic. All right,
sorry
so
about yeah,
so sorry, I have to cut it because I want to make sure that because it's like really important for
sure,
the folks
sorry
in,
about that.
in the economy, in the creator economy. Which the question was, what can you as an agent or creators do day one to start to the low hanging fruit and moving away from relying on the traditional brand deal or promoting some product that you don't care, don't have any knowledge of what it's actually about.
Yeah.
And the first thing that you said, I'm just going to take it out of.
I'm not trying to be redundant because I agree, like with
No, but
equity
this is
deals.
really
Yeah,
important because I want to make sure the point as we're kind of finding our voice and just talking about a bunch of different stuff. The point is to give people the actionable items. And what you said was find the creators or find examples and case studies
yeah,
of people that have successfully done that and let that influence and give you ideas for what to do. Is that
yeah.
right?
That's correct. Yeah, I
Okay.
guess I could put period.
So
Yeah.
on that point, as an agent representing your talent and your other agents at RSA, are there any specific examples or things that you're doing internally at the agency to start to diversify or broaden how creators can support their work?
Yeah, so a lot of what we're doing is we're asking them, and we're putting it on their plates, like what types of products, like not just do you want to promote, but like do you want to be a part of in the creation process? Um, I mean, we could find some great products out there, but a lot of the times too, like I think if you want to put your best foot forward, like I think it should be more curated to what you think will make a positive impact in your community. What's relevant to you, especially as well, like what are you passionate about? Not just like because there's great products that you might not care for. but kind of putting into the wheelhouse of like, what do you want to bring to your community, not just like what's going to be the highest bidder, from a corporation for the most part. So, um, starting our job is to give them the perspective and the right thought process to how to do this, and they ultimately, as the owners of their own channels, control um, what levers they're going to pull with us, and how we can help them achieve that. So,
Sure.
um,
So basically really focusing on just being more intentional about curation of what to support and what to get behind and what to get involved with.
correct. Yeah.
But you mentioned something to me, and this is one of my questions, something I think a lot about as a kind of push it back over to you, which is, a lot of creators don't have much of a choice,
No, that's
right?
the hardest part.
And so how do you, how are you thinking about as you're moving forward and the talents to work with the talents to sound like, are you kind of moving more towards like this kind of quality over quantity approach, or like having an internal requirement? Because at the end of the day, if the creator's not providing something of value or solving a problem for their community, or entertaining them in a certain way, like there's only so much you can do as an agent, right?
Yes, correct.
So
Correct.
how do you? I mean, how are you thinking about? I know we've talked about it offline, but um, the curation of talent that you're working with at RSA, how is that going to like kind of change over time as this kind of next chapter of the creator economy comes to fruition?
Are we going to share what we're doing with the creator rank? Like, I don't know what we're putting out on the public. I was kind of giving it over this surface
Open
answer.
discussion. We're not
Okay,
editing any of this, so
okay. Well, internally, we've been just building out, I think, a good system of objective and subjective information with creators right now to see, because it's really hard and it hasn't been effective. Just simply, the metrics are important, but it's not even close to everything. So, a lot of to date brands have tried to numerically value every creator, and what we're trying to do is also value them based on the types of content they're putting out, the true impact that we think they're making based on both objective and subjective analysis, and um, pretty much weeding out the ones that we don't feel like fit our thesis for starting our product lines, um, which is entirely different way of just shopping out the talents that we think will have the most value to brands based on, I think, metrics that are just applicable to everyone, but not really solutions to everyone per se. And I think it's just going to come down to as an agency to really find the ones looking to make a real impact, and that and the numbers won't always tell the true story in that
sure.
sense because
Well, I
it's the
think
best. Yeah,
yeah, I think that's an interesting one. Obviously, we talk very closely about it, and then kind of putting our heads together on as you think about this mix of objective and subjective information. Right, the numbers don't always tell the story, and I think what's interesting about your approach and perspective is as attention gets more fractionated, as more and more content's created, I think it's gonna be much harder for people to have their voice be heard, which is pretty interesting,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So what that means is, as an agency, it's kind of like this concept of like you have to go, you gotta go digging,
yeah,
right? You gotta go digging. You gotta like get into the feeds in a very deep way, really understand categories and what they're doing within their category. Do they have something really important to say? Um, what, like how, like what are they motivated by, right? What do they really want to accomplish with this work, right? And so
yeah,
it's very fascinating you said that, and I obviously I'm aligned with it, but I couldn't agree more. I think actually as we move along, the subjective piece is going to be even more important than the objective, which is kind of ironic, especially because
yeah.
pretty soon the AI will be able to do every objective analysis that we need it to do. So
You're seeing like CEOs of some of the largest companies, like, yeah, I'm probably going to be replaced pretty quickly. It's like, what? How does the average person feel when they hear that? It's important people like, yeah, I have no real value anymore because of AI. I think the only thing I think that we do have value is our agency. Ironically, it's our decision making. Like, that's
yeah,
something that can't replace in our perspective. And um, like, I think the human experience is still like the biggest thing. But that's what's so interesting about our industry.
I agree. I mean, we talked about this, and I think it's a separate episode around AI talent agents, but
Yeah,
the it's that human element, and I think one of the things I didn't appreciate before I started speaking to more creators and agents and kind of being in this, getting exposed to this world was creating content is like really intense.
yeah.
It's like to do it really well, Like we're just having fun here.
I know.
Like,
I don't consider myself a content creator at all.
yeah, right. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
like we're having fun. We're sharing our insights. We're going to continue to do that over and over again. Well, maybe we'll come up with some different formats or whatever, and hopefully people will find it interesting. Most will probably find it boring at the beginning till we really find the flow. But
Or we could clip the best 15 seconds, Jordan, and just share that because that will get their attention. Because after that, they're out the door anyway. So
yeah, for sure.
I'm joking. Yeah.
But it was something that you said very early on, obviously with your experiences. It's just the human element, and things like mental health and an emotional support and being there when people are going through good times and bad times, both personally and professionally. And really actually, which is like an interesting one, like you have to make the best decisions for other people's essentially careers, which is what you're doing, or you're helping them make the best decisions. You're guiding them, you're giving them guidance. You have to really care about them.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
I know.
That is just for the vast majority of the market. Obviously, if you're like, if such a large following and such a heavy amount of influence, you can, you pick and choose what you want to do, but that's not the reality for most people,
No. And I think it's not a sad thing that AI was like it's a really beautiful thing in a sense where like I mean like if you think about it, we're advancing society, we're making things easier, like economically speaking, it's fantastic. It should actually help us double down on more of the human stuff. Like it becomes more important. Like we've always kind of valued mental health a little bit, or we valued what we eat a little bit, or we valued the impact we can make in our communities. Right? It was always like sprinkled in, and like maybe we're at a point right now where it's like let's really double down on that stuff because all the stuff we spent a lot of time on now, like we won't need to do as much. So like there's an element where like this could really amplify the human experience in many ways, and that might be an optimistic perspective. But we'll see. Like we're getting more time given to the things. Yeah, I don't know.
The robots are coming, man. I've been saying that for a year or two now, and they're really coming now. So we'll be interested.
I was at a space conference, like in the Terminator. We'll see, but I was at a conference in Austin, Texas, a few months ago. I mean, a lot of cool people were there, like Eugene Roddenberry from Star Trek. Like that's the entertainment side of me, like getting excited. But like people like actually building robotics to go to like Mars and space and like find habitat. Like I mean, it's crazy some of the things we're not just doing here, but like interplanetary travel and like building, habitating. Like it's moving. It seems relatively over the last 20 years or so, just moving really rapidly from where we were as a society for thousands of years. Like technology, like when you get a little bit of good technology, that the effects of it compound so much so quickly. That's kind of I think what we've seen in this technological revolution.
Sure. Well, on that point, I think it's a good place to leave off though. But I'll mention it. It was very eye opening for me. Do you know who Ray Kurzweil is?
No, I should know who that is. I don't.
Yeah, he's like a very well known like futurist and author. He like has written a bunch of books on the future and technology and making like pretty bold predictions, and has been pretty spot on over the past 30 years, 40 years. Anyways, I know you're a Rogan fan, and he was on you should check it out. The last episode he was on, right at the beginning, in like the first 20 minutes of the episode, he brought up a really interesting chart around the pace of technological advancement, to your point. And he was just making the case that if you just study the numbers at the rate of which compute is compounding and the rate at which technology is accelerating, and I think he used solar as an example. He used a couple different examples. It's just like, he goes, just look at the chart. It's like, and his whole thing is like, I forgot the year he said, but he goes by 2030 or something, like have complete, I forgot what it was. It was something around complete super intelligence, artificial super intelligence by 2030. And then what he said, which was very fascinating, was because he was talking about solar and energy. He goes, the energy crisis is fixed.
Yeah.
It's solved. He's like, people don't realize it. Everyone's so freaking out about what happens tomorrow or in 2 months or 6 months or 1 year or 2 years. He's like, no one thinks in decades. He goes, just study the rate at the rate at which the density of solar panels are being produced, and at the rate of the cost reduction in energy generation, and the numbers are right there in front of you. He goes, it's solved. And then the counterpoint to that was like, yeah, but the issue is the grid and the storage and getting that new energy onto the grid, and it's all outdated. He's like, yeah, those are little hiccups, but once again, you're focusing on the short term. He goes, all of the technology being developed for energy storage and to building new pipes, like it's going to take time, but he goes, it's solved. It's very interesting.
Very interesting.
Is super interesting in the sense of going back to your point. I think coming back to the point of like, we go through these periods of time where like people use like society, culture, people like kind of like you can lose your head based upon however you're conditioned or what people are telling you, right? Going back to this whole thing around censorship. And but ultimately, like over time, the truth stands.
Yeah, it always does. It comes out, even if it gets hidden. Yeah, it comes back out.
And so now this is the craziest thing. It's like, what if we live in a world where the independent creator, right? They have the necessary support systems and infrastructure to make a living and a good living, doing what they enjoy doing and helping inform and telling the truth about whatever topic that it is.
Yeah.
And that could be like, and you also have the pure entertainment stuff and whatever too, but like just that is the goal, right?
Yes.
But because the problem is right now, it's like we don't have ways for a lot of them to survive and be full-time on their craft. So they have to compromise to pay their bills.
Yes.
That is the whole point, right?
That is 100% the in a nutshell.
Right. So it's like we
it's
talk about
it's so new too, by the way, too. It's also because the rest of the world has a moment. It should actually be such an easy shift where they don't have to work. And the wrong ones won't make it. I guess we talked about this too.
Sure.
But like even for the most part, I'm going to be honest, like the cheapest creator there is, like it just literally sells soda cans or whatever, like something really like not really helpful. But like even under the right scenarios, you could probably map out the value, like they can probably make a living doing that. Like on the low end. But like on the high end, like what we're referring to and like what's important, like there's such opportunity. If the world can see where things are going. And more importantly, I think the creator wakes up, right? Like they have the power to do that yesterday.
Well, I don't, I'll say this, which is, it goes back to what you were saying and what you're trying to do at the agency, which is how do you get the creator to be more mindful?
Yes.
Right? About what it is that they're aligning themselves with. So if you can do both, this is kind of what I'm saying. It's like, you can't say, okay, we want to go get, public health organizations to put real budgets into social and online marketing, not marketing, but, online information to educate the public. But you can't line that up with then like creators that are just like, have no knowledge, have no interest. They're just doing it to make the dollar. Like it doesn't work. You actually need both sides of the marketplace.
100%. I was just making a theoretical, like, and even like selling water bottle, whatever it might be. Like I'm just making just a simple mathematical equation that like, if you're able to sell enough water bottles every month, and you want to make an impact online, because then you can do that. Like you see the difference is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of just if you really want to go full circle everything we said. And I think what's so great about what happened with the Zuckerberg announcement, but like without the censorship and maybe like taking their hands off the algorithm, creators don't have to fit into this social media trend of content that will actually reach people based on that centralized planner is trying to say you got to make content like this because it's brand safe, right? Or whatever it might be. It's opened up the doors for them to make the content they want to make and then have the type of partnerships they want to have.
That's exactly right. It's the idea is in now that being said, which is what's so fascinating about this is the amount of competition for the eyeballs is just insane. So if you don't have, this is kind of what I'm saying. I'm like so interested in this, like people around my age, career, life, whatever, like you kind of, in some level at this point, because the market's becoming more and more mature, you have to have something important to say.
Yes.
That people will find useful, right? You have to have some credibility.
Yes.
Or you go on this path. I like this path. This is kind of the path that I always like doing, is when, or if you're exploring something new, you just explore something new and you establish that credibility, but that just takes years.
Yes.
You know,
that's
so.
correct.
All right, my man. Well, thank you, sir. I think we'll wrap it here. We'll be back at y'all next week, and yeah, we're gonna start getting more topical with what we like each week. But have a good week, my man, and stay strong.
I always love our conversations, Jordan. Thanks again.
3, 2, 1, let's go!